In the year of 1870, the United States of America was under the presidency of former U.S. General Ulysses S. Grant. The end of the Civil War, just 5 years behind them. Still several years ahead, Thomas Edison would file the first commercially successful patent on the light bulb. On Tuesday evening, November 15, 1870, a small group of believers met at the home of Ezekiel and Sarah Wade in the township of East Brunswick, New Jersey. Their purpose for meeting was to establish a commitment and open a new Baptist church in the nearby community. That evening, the 12 believers pledged to donate funds towards the erecting of a new church building. Within days, the building committee obtained a plot of land that was donated by local retired businessman Samuel Whitehead. The land was located at the corners of Main and Jackson Streets in the village of Washington, within the limits of East Brunswick. This village would go on to be renamed South River after the branch of the Raritan River that runs on the east side of town. By May of 1871, construction of the church building was completed, and a dedication service was held to establish the church in the community. The offering collected at the service was enough to complete the payments on the building, allowing the church to begin without debt. In a business meeting on November 12, 1871, the church members finally settled on a name for the church, the Tabernacle Baptist Church. But it would not be till a year later that the church would call their first official pastor, Reverend Matthew Johnson, and join the Baptist Convention a month afterwards. Over the next several years, the church slowly grew as the pastor position would change hands a few times. Notably, during this time period, Reverend C.H. Woolston took over the pulpit, leading revival meetings within the church. It was in his sermon in 1884 that Reverend Woolston would give us a picture of the early days of baptism at Tabernacle.
February 8th, 1880. A cold and wintry day. Floating ice and snowbanks greeted the procession of candidates as they advanced with solemn steps toward the sacred wave.
For indeed, baptisms were held down Jackson Street in the river, even in the dead of winter. The church building was enlarged in 1881 in order to make room for the growing Sunday school classes and services as revival had swept the church and community. According to the Tabernacle Times, a publication begun by Reverend Woolston, the church was dedicated again on August 28, 1881. But the forces of evil fought against the growing church, especially after the departure of Reverend Woolston. For a short period of time, the church experienced some trials and struggles as they moved through the mid-1880s. New spiritual growth and development met the church as Reverend G.H. Gardner entered the pulpit in 1888. The church purchased a plot of land directly behind the building on Jackson Street and erected a parsonage. More expansions to the church building were completed in 1890, and the church was raised to include a full basement and enlarged to include a baptistry. As the years continued, the church entered the 20th century, and the church building began to show signs of aging, so the members moved to begin a new building to replace the wooden structure. In 1908, the dedication of a new brick church was held as the church entered a mortgage of over $4,000 for the new building. The sanctuary was designed acoustically appealing with its curved pews, sloped floors, and high ceilings. It also featured a built-in pipe organ, stained glass windows, a baptistry, and a castle-looking bell tower at the entrance of the building. Tabernacle saw a change in the pulpit over the next few years as the world around them experienced the First World War, the polio epidemic of 1916, and the influenza pandemic. The church was fortunate to have a stable pastor during the Great Depression, as Reverend B.F. Griffith served the church from 1925 until his death in 1936. Within months of the passing of Reverend Griffith, the church was able to call Reverend Asa C. Moore to the ministry. Reverend Moore is noted in the church's history as the pastor who helped lay the spiritual groundwork that later led the church to withdraw from the Baptist Convention and become an independent Baptist church. He resigned from the church a few years after the Second World War. In 1950, under the pastorate of Reverend Walter Reichner, the church broke ground for a new Sunday school addition to the brick church building, as well as made some repairs to the existing structure. The local newspapers reported the repairs being made by the men's work group, which would meet every Monday evening to work on the church building. August of 1952 brought in the ministry of Reverend Donald Balfour. During his 32-year ministry, Tabernacle experienced a growing membership to over 250 people, a successful bus ministry, a Sunday school with an average of over 360 per week, a radio ministry, and the building of our present-day church. May 15, 1960, was the dedication of our modern church building, which featured seating for up to 350 in the sanctuary, unique floor-to-ceiling fiberglass walls, which formerly hung as the ceiling in the 1958 World's Fair American exhibit, a fellowship hall in the basement, and a cross-tip steeple which brought the overall height to the building to 60 feet. The church went on to see the ministries of Reverends Ronald Mahood and William Mason prior to the 125th anniversary celebration. Sunday, November 12, 1995, brought a day of jubilee as previous pastors took the pulpit throughout the day. Many congregants and visitors filled the pews. The late 1990s brought the ministry of Reverend Charles Johnson. Pastor Johnson had the unfortunate task of overseeing the demolition of the old brick church building in 1998, shortly after his joining the church. The building had fallen into disrepair over the years, and a harsh winter had caused extensive water damage to the interior. The entire town mourned the loss of such a historic building in the community, and to this day the lot sits empty. The early 2000s would see the sale of one of the 4 homes owned by the church in order to help fund the repairs of another. The former Whitehead home, known to the church as the House of Prayer, was on the verge of being torn down when it was finally determined that the church would restore the building to become the new parsonage. Work was completed, and Pastor Johnson and his family moved in February of 2009. As we enter more present times, nearing the 150th anniversary of Tabernacle, we find the church under the ministry of not only senior pastor Paul Overdorf, but also 2 associate pastors, Daniel Murphy and James Donarski. Over this next year, we will be looking into more details of Tabernacle's history, looking back, planning for the years to come, looking ahead, and celebrating the 150 years of service to our Lord.